record this. Thank you for joining us today for the Trachtenberg Schools Alumni Panel on what does it really mean to be a program management analyst within the federal government. As we were speaking earlier with the alumni, it is one of my favorite panels because we do one in the fall that's on what does it really mean to be a policy analyst. And I always feel like this panel helps people open their eyes to the diversity of work that people do, depending on agencies, depending on where they are in their careers. So this is just really fascinating. Our alumni that we have here joining us today are at such different points in their career and different agencies, and I expect everybody is going to learn so much. So I wanted, before I turn it over to the alumni, just again, thank you for taking the time out of your schedule for these alumni to be able to share with us. So welcome. Katelyn, you were the first one to log on, so I'm going to start with you to share a little bit, to do the bios about yourself before we open it up to questions.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Denise. My name is Katelyn Wannage. I graduated from the Trachtenberg School in 2012 with an MPA. Prior to that, I got my undergraduate degree from Louisiana State University, and that's in international studies, and have been working in the federal government more or less the last 13 years. I started out at the Department of Homeland Security in the predecessor to what's now the Pathways program. So started there while I was in school at GW and worked part-time, and then was able to get a full-time position there when my program ended. Was there for about 3 years, and then have been at the Food and Drug Administration for about the past 10 years. I actually started out in more of a human resources. I guess this kind of speaks to the diversity of things that you can do with a management and program analysis series. But at Homeland Security, I was really in a role that was heavily administrative, supporting an office of about 200 people with everything from human resources to IT to space and facilities. And one of my customers in that office was an employee who worked in the budget shop, and he left DHS to go to the Food and Drug Administration and had several positions to fill, and recruited me to move over to FDA with him. So that's how I got to FDA, and have been there ever since. Spent about 9 years in the Center for Food Safety and Applied Nutrition. And for about the past 9 months, I've been with the Center for Biologics Research and Evaluation. And my day-to-day job now is really focused on a couple of key areas. The first is budget formulation, which is really telling the story of our center's programmatic needs, putting together the annual budget justification that goes to Congress, and then justifying those resources throughout the year as stakeholders ask. And then the other part of it in my portfolio now is really strategic planning and performance metric monitoring. So I'm currently a branch chief. I have 7 people reporting to me who take care of those various functions. And it's just a wide array of topics in the job every day, which I really like.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Katelyn. Next on my screen is Holly, all the way out in Montana.
Yes, I am in Helena, Montana. I finished my MPA in 2013 and then moved out here to Montana in 2016. I'm a program and management analyst with the U.S. Geological Survey, which is the science arm of the federal government. I'm in a program that does climate change science specifically. So we look at ways that climate change is expected to impact fish and wildlife and communities. I also, like Katelyn, got this position while I was at GW in the, it was called SCEP then, now it's Pathways. So while I was a student, I got the job at USGS. So I've been in the same office for 12 years or something. I've moved up a few GS steps or levels, but I've essentially been doing the same thing in the same position for about 12 years. And it's never been the same. I've done many different things in this position. I think that'll be a recurring theme from all of us, is that we all kind of have a lot of flexibility and do a lot of different things in the program and management analyst series. I do things that include IT and system development. I do a lot of partnership work. So I manage a federal advisory council that is made up of 18 executive level non-federal partners who provide recommendations to us on various things. I also do a lot of improvements, so strategic improvements to our operations, mainly internal operations. So just looking at our administrative workflows and different things that the employees are working on and trying to make them more efficient, trying to increase employee experience and satisfaction. So just really kind of doing a full analysis and improvement view of our program. And yeah, I think that's it for now. Thanks.
Fantastic. Shaun-Dae, I'm going to go to you next.
Hello, everyone. I'm Shaun-Dae. I currently work at the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, otherwise known as HUD. I graduated from the Trachtenberg School just 2 years ago in 2022. And then I also did GW for undergrad. So I got a chance to do a bunch of different work study opportunities and jobs and internships around DC that really helped me hone in on the policy area that I liked and that I wanted to build my career off of. And that turned out to be affordable housing and community development. And so since then, I was really able to be strategic about my career and where to go. After undergrad, I did an internship at an affordable housing national nonprofit. And that's where I met a bunch of people, learned more about the industry, figured out what I liked and didn't like about the housing policy landscape, which is landed me somewhere in the quasi-private sector. It was a government-sponsored enterprise, so it was technically private, but not actually private. And I got to do more industry work, practitioner work. I was still on the program side for most of my time there, but actually able to see how the financing of housing works and building that knowledge while doing my program at the Trachtenberg School. And then going into the Trachtenberg School, actually, I thought I wanted to focus on state and local policy, but as you can see, now I'm in the federal government. So I think it's interesting how your sort of priorities and interests change while you're in the program, especially if you're also working at the same time. And so, yeah, I ended up at my current job. I've only been here for 5.5 months, so it's brand new, but it's a really good fit. And I think it's a culmination of all the other jobs I've had before I got here. I work on a brand new program that was created by the Inflation Reduction Act. And so the program it was implemented while it's still being designed and developed. And so I get to do a lot of that, both implementation work and that development of program policies and processes work. I do a lot of project management and tracking. I help coordinate updates to our housing notice and our NOFOs, so the notices of funding opportunity. And those are the documents that basically govern the program policy and how to apply for funding for the program. I'm a subject matter expert on one of the funding paths for the program. So we have an inbox and I respond to questions in the inbox. I help hold office hours for the program. And so, yeah, as everyone said, it's a really diverse role with different responsibilities. And I'm more focused on sort of program administration and policy development and administration.
I love hearing about everybody's positions because they're so incredibly diverse. Diana, we'll go with you next.
Thank you. So hi all, I am Diana Marcum. I graduated from GW in 2020 with an MA in Environmental Resource Policy. So my career path has spanned quite the spectrum. I feel like starting in the state service at the Nebraska Forest Service when I was an undergrad working as a communications assistant. Then after graduating, I went to the federal side at the Department of Agriculture's Economic Research Service. I worked there full-time as a Pathways intern while also pursuing my degree at GW. And after a while there, I went to the nonprofit world, working for the United Nations Foundation's Climate Alliance for a couple of years. That was my first introduction to more environmental and policy-based work. Upon leaving them and graduating from GW, I joined a small firm, was a contractor for Homeland Security, at their Science Technology Directorate. I was there for a little over 2 years working as a tech consultant before finally returning to the federal space. I joined the EPA then, and again, it was under the Pathways program, this time as a recent graduate Pathways. I think as most of my fellow panelists will say, the Pathways program is a fantastic entryway into the federal space. So now at EPA, to break it down a little bit farther, I am a program analyst within the Office of Site Remediation Enforcement. So I work under CERCLA, or as it's more commonly known as Superfund. My primary function here is actually on the data team. I'm one of the lead analysts managing 5 of the 10 EPA regions that make up the US and surrounding territories. So I manage and track the Superfund enforcement data for timeliness, accuracy. I help conduct regular analysis on a national level. There's also a lot of work that I do outside of the Superfund database, managing and developing different projects, working with folks across the office. I'll leave it at that. We can get more into that later on, maybe. So I'll pass it back to Denise, or our next panelist, if he's joined.
He has not joined us yet. Hopefully he will be joining us very soon. So in the meantime, I would love to hear from questions from all of you. As I said, I could certainly ask the questions, but this is an opportunity for all of you to be asking questions for all the panelists, for somebody in particular. So let me take a pause here. I don't see anything in the chat yet, but does someone want to raise their hand and ask a question?
I will. Thank you guys for being here today. On USA Jobs and other federal job posting boards, I see a lot of positions that are either labeled as a program analysis position or the management analysis positions. Is there really like a technical difference, or are they kind of like, you know, equals, or any insight you can share on that?
I can try as a hiring manager. I would guess that there is a technical difference when you get down to the OPM regs on what qualifies under the different titles that you can have under a 343 series. From my experience, though, oftentimes offices and hiring managers are limited by what's been previously classified for a position. So if you've had a program analysis position description that's been classified for the last 6 years, you already have people working under it and it's ready to go, you're much more likely to use that to try to hire with versus going through the process to get a brand new one done, just so that it might be able to say management and program analysis. The position description classification process can be kind of cumbersome, and oftentimes it slows down hiring. So I would say if the position looks interesting to you, I wouldn't pay too much attention to that distinction.
Perfect, thank you.
There's no one else that wants to answer that question. One question came in as a direct message to me, so I'm going to read this out loud. How does program analyst differ from budget analysts or other types of analysts? It seems like program management can cover multiple areas that are similar to other positions.
I think I can start. I think just building off of what Katelyn kind of just described, different agencies will define these positions differently for every agency, and the actual title, whether it's program analyst or budget analyst, is more of a, I would say, a formality. And so when you're looking at job postings, really pay attention to the actual job description, because that's what's going to tell you exactly what you would be doing in that position. It's less about what the actual series is, more about what the job description is. That said, in my experience with my organization, budget analysts are really the ones who are developing or supporting budget implementation, really. So and processing, we give out a lot of grants, and so they are the ones that actually do the processing of grants, they move money around USGS, they send money out to universities, they do all of that really like more technical budget work, whereas a program analyst might do more of the strategic work on deciding what the money will be spent on, or how you will implement this, rather than the actual components of what kind of paperwork goes into this, what financial systems are we using to enter data, and so on. But others might have different experience.
I'd say also, insofar as it's possible, if like the job description has detail about the specific office that the job is in, that'll tell you. For example, I'm in what's called a program administration office. And so everyone in my office is either a specialist related to the program or a program analyst. And we do strictly program implementation and policy work. And those sort of descriptors are also on the website for the actual office I work in. There are other people on like the broader team outside of the program administration office. So I work under another umbrella that's called the Office of Recapitalization. And so there's like a administration office, there's like a transactions division, there's an investments division, and something like a financial analyst would be in like the investments division. And someone like a budget analyst would likely be in like either the front office or maybe like the investments division as well. So that may give you a clue if you can do additional research on the specific office that the position is in.
Before I go to the next question, we have our fifth panelist, Mike, who was pulled into a meeting. Mike, before I go to the next question, I know you just logged on, are you able to just share a little bit of your background about your career path to where you are, and a little bit of what you do, and then I'll go to a question came into the chat. Would be wonderful.
Yeah, sure. Hi everyone. So sorry about being late. But I'm Mike Fucci. I'm with the Administration for Strategic Preparedness and Response, which is in the Department of Health and Human Services. And I'm a management analyst there in the policy division. And so basically, what we do is we lead the medical and public health response and recovery to emergencies and disasters. And my career path is, I concentrated in disaster management coming out of Trachtenberg, and I started as I interned at the American Red Cross and worked on a lot of helping them with planning, and then I was a contractor with FEMA, and that was also writing response plans for usually around biochemical, nuclear and radiological incidents. And then I came over to the Administration for Strategic Preparedness and Response as a contractor in the policy division. I was a contractor there for a couple of years, and then I converted over to a federal employee, which was actually kind of the ideal transition, because I was the same office, the same role, basically just going from a contractor to a Fed. And so that's where I've been there for the last 3 years now. So yeah, that's kind of my background to get there.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for joining us with having meetings and balancing all of the stuff that everybody does. A question came in that I think would be great for everybody. Someone asked, Holly mentioned the variety of work you're able to do as a program management analyst. Is that the variety within your role, within the role, such as different evaluation tasks, or does that also include less traditional analyst tasks? So I think that with the gist of that question, and let me know if I've captured that, Annabelle, you wrote the question, and it's just a little bit more information about kind of the variety of the work and what you're not able to do within the scope of being a program management analyst. So I think it'll be interesting to hear the diversity between all of your roles. Whoever wants to start first. Okay, Diana.
Yeah, I can take a stab at this first. So, in my experience, I would say the variety of work kind of crosses both of these portions that you mentioned within like the different tasks that I'm given, evaluation tasks that I'm given, as well as just less traditional analyst tasks. So, I have done a lot of work that spans, like I said, more traditionally, I am a data analyst at my work. I will be doing ad hoc data pools and reports for management and for different teams that I'm on. But I'll also do a lot of work that is less traditionally analyzing. So within my branch, there is another half of my team that are data analysts that are actually training people. So they go out to the regions and they train folks about just what Superfund is, and they host a lot of different educational tasks. So I think it kind of is a very broad spectrum. And I mentioned that I do a lot of program development. One of the projects I'm working on right now is it's less evaluation than I have ever done in my current position. It is working a lot with the regions to just talk to them and just enhance that communication. And so I think the analyst role is I love it because it can be such a broad role. You can kind of, at least within my office, we're encouraged to just really try other sections of work and sort of create the environment and the process that you enjoy the most. So I've been really working on that, like program management work. But yeah, I'm on the back end. My core functions are still that data analyst role. I hope that encompasses your question.
Who would like to answer this one next?
I can jump in. So I think similarly with mine, it's well, and I think my position was really unique because when I joined the USGS 12 years ago, this program had just started up. And so they were just trying to get warm bodies into chairs. And it was very much in the startup phase for a long time. So everyone was just pitching in anywhere that they could. And I think that has carried through with my position because the program management analyst position has so much flexibility. I mentioned in my intro, I'm doing this partnership work where I'm managing this federal advisory council. The only reason I'm doing that is because our partnerships coordinator left about a year ago and we haven't filled that position yet. And so that's really not something that's in my scope traditionally, but they just needed someone and my skill set aligned with it. And so I stepped into that role. Same with some of the IT stuff that I'm doing. We're actually in the process of bringing on an IT specialist, and I'm going to be transferring a lot of the tasks that I do right now to them. And so for me, it's just been a lot of wherever I'm needed. That's kind of where I've gone, which has been really interesting because it's allowed me to touch a lot of different places in the organization and really figure out what I enjoy doing and what I don't enjoy doing. And that's really kind of allowed me to figure out where I want to go in the future. It's taken me like 20 years to figure out what I want to do with my life, but I finally getting there.
Before the next person goes, I just want to say, Holly, how much I love you sharing the honesty about the randomness in some ways and how sometimes being open to the randomness and saying yes to whatever opens up in your career has allowed you to figure out what it is that you want to be when you grow up. So I just wanted to echo that because that's something we often hear. Who would like to go next to share in response to this question?
I can go. For me, the variety is really in it's different subject matter areas. One day you might be working on something with like the medical supply chain, and then the next day you're working on an IT issue, and it's developing policies or helping to write a strategy or doing an evaluation. But a big part of it is being the ability to learn quickly about whatever the subject matter is. So you'll get brought in and you meet with the program experts, and they give you a brain dump of like everything they do, and then it's taking all that info and putting it into a policy or a strategy or whatever that it needs to be. So you get to work on a lot of different subject matter and topic areas.
Who else would like to answer this one?
I can go next, Denise. Yeah, I think so. I mentioned before, my primary focus now is budget formulation and strategic planning. And I think for both of those, they're sort of where the rubber meets the road, where the policy meets the resources. The program that I'm in now actually has a pretty even split between budget authority, which is what is given to agencies through the typical budget process, the congressional appropriations process, and user fees, which are fees paid by industry for a service in return. And there's a lot of really interesting questions that come up throughout that relationship, because there are certain things that are allowed within the user fee legislation and not. There are certain things that are priorities regardless of how they're funded. It's very tricky sometimes. It's like a puzzle. And I think that kind of goes back to the question of, what is involved in an analysis job. And I think it's kind of like why it's hard to say on paper what makes a good analyst, why it's hard to train new people, because sometimes it's just that you have an inherent curiosity about what the task is that you're doing. You're asking smart questions, you know where to look for answers or who to ask. To Mike's point, you know how to be an expert on something quickly, or you can try to find the resources to make yourself as expert as you can quickly. I think one thing I really like about my job is that the point of budget formulation and strategic planning is to kind of explain the technical stuff to non-technical stakeholders. And honestly, even since switching centers within FDA and being in this role for only 9 months, I'm still coming up to speed on what the program is here. And I'm not a scientist, and sometimes I feel out of my depth in trying to explain it to stakeholders. And then I have to remind myself and my team also that the person we're talking to, maybe it's someone who works for the committee staff on the Hill. We are one tiny slice of this huge portfolio of issues that they are dealing with, and they probably don't understand it, any better than I do. And I really am the expert in that situation. How can we put it in language that makes sense to them? So I think a lot of the job is about paying attention to the details, but also being able to put yourself, I think the success and long-term career growth comes in being able to see that bigger picture and how the puzzle pieces fit together more broadly. And, a lot of that comes with years of experience, diversity of experience in your own career. It's one of those things that takes time to build, but somebody else asked another question about what classes are good to take, and this kind of builds on that. I think understanding the budget process, regardless of where you're going to end up in federal government, is really helpful, because even if you're not a budget person, I don't think anybody grows up saying, I want to be a budget formulator. Even if that's not you, if you want to be a program manager, then at some point you're going to have to figure out how to get resources for your program. And so having a basic understanding of that process, I think, can be really helpful.
Did everyone answer the first question? Because if not, we can pivot to the second question. Did everyone answer that first question? So if not, pivot maybe to the question around classes. Question was regarding, are there certain skills you use most in your position? Heavily data, stats, research methods, data visualization. What do you rely most on your policy issue area? It's a great question. And if there's any classes, I know some of you have been out a little longer than others, but for some of you who haven't, if you're like, oh, this class is something I'm still thinking about, would be great.
Yeah, I love this question because it's something I wish I knew at the beginning of my Trachtenberg experience. I'd say take as many tools of analysis classes as you can, because skills you'll learn there are transferable to any job, even if you want to change issue areas at some point. And then in those classes, you can always focus your projects or research assignments on the issue area that you like to learn more about the issue area while still developing those skills. Like I said, I started out my program thinking I wanted to do state and local policy, and I bounced around to different issue areas throughout, and I wish I took more tools classes. My favorites were decision modeling. That was a really good one, especially if you're like a Excel newbie. What other ones? There's I didn't take the data visualization. I wish I took that one. Data analysis, like I think those are all really great skills to have for any job you're in, especially as an analyst, where, as we said, you're going to be doing a lot of things ad hoc, including data analysis.
Those sound awesome. I wish I had taken some of those way back when. I did take a policy analysis class, which really just helped you look at different policy options and analyze and evaluate them, which I thought was really helpful. I was going to say too, I had a class when I was at Trachtenberg. I can't remember what it was, but the professor said one day, in 10 years, you will be giving PowerPoint presentations almost every day. And at the time, I was like, no way, I never give presentations. But it's true. I give them now all the time. And a lot of times they're only 5 minute long, you know, informal, whatever. But being able to communicate well, make a really nice PowerPoints, I think that is a huge skill that is also transferable to anyone. I also love what Katelyn said about having an inherent curiosity. I think just problem solving skills, being able to adapt, being able to jump to different projects really quickly. I think those are really great skills.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on Holly was saying that communications, science communications is my personal background, so I got my undergrad degree in, but I know GW has a really great science communications program, and I think some classes. I would heavily encourage you to continue on that, because I think even Katelyn was saying, having to describe or communicate technical things to non-technical people, that is such a wonderful skill set to have, and it's going to be so useful to you, because especially as you grow in your career and start to brief like senior management and whatnot, they need to what do they say in the journalism school is sometimes you need to communicate at like a 5th grade level for folks to understand it, and it's the truth of the matter sometimes. And I think we as analysts can get into the weeds of things. We really get excited about the nitty-gritty technical terms, but not everyone can understand that. And that's something I think we can really work on to just help our communication skills. And as far as presentations goes, it's not within the GW school, but there is an online program through Echo Rivera that I would highly recommend. She does a wonderful presentation course that is online. There's some free classes. I would encourage you all to look into that as well.
Diane, if at any point you can send me that information, that would be great to share.
Will do.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. And similar to the budgeting, having a basic understanding of contracting is also helpful, because there's going to be things that you want to do that's dependent on a contract, or sometimes you have to modify a contract. So just having a basic understanding of that as well. But you know, and anything where you can work on your writing, I think just having strong writing skills, being able to write concise, you know, kind of to the point documents is that's going to be really helpful.
I could ask some questions. So I'm going to ask, we have a couple minutes here, and I'm going to ask a couple questions together kind of to wrap it up, and kind of a question that maybe students don't always want to ask, but I'll combine this together, is kind of why the federal government to have the impact that you want to have in your work versus private versus nonprofit. So why the federal government, and are you making any sacrifices financially by choosing to be in the federal government? And why are you making that decision, or is it not a decision about that? Because that's often something that we hear in career services. So I will let you all play with that one as your final. I saw some interesting reactions, so whoever wants to start with that one, with those questions. And we'll open up the breakout rooms after this.
I can start. You might have heard an interruption earlier. It was because my 2-year-old was banging on my office door and was not corralled by her father. And I mean, that is one of the reasons why I continue to stay with the federal government. Especially over the last few years, the remote posture has allowed me a ton of flexibility as I became a parent for the first time. At the same time, allowed me to continue growing my career, and I haven't felt stalled out by that, which I know can often happen in other industries. In terms of pay, I mean, I think it really just depends on where you end up in the federal government, and it's so hard to predict that. I'll be really honest, FDA has a few special pay rates that are outside of the general schedule, and based upon that, I don't see myself leaving anytime soon. And so the goal is very much to diversify my skills and experience within FDA, my connections, and kind of stay here for the long haul. I have always heard that, you know, private sector, you make more money. I don't know if I really buy that fully once you calculate the intangibles and the retirement benefits, et cetera. But you know, everyone has to kind of make their own decisions. Also, I'm very risk averse, and so the idea of being laid off in a private company really just, like, I can't handle it. But I know that about myself, and you know, that's okay. I've managed to find success in spite of that. But there are lots of other people who want to move jobs frequently and work in lots of different types of environments. And so in that way, maybe, you know, there might be better pathways for you, or you might be one of those people that wants to jump around between agencies a lot and get a lot of experience that way.
I want to just chime in something that you said, Katelyn. I think is just so important to double down on the fact that you're like, I know this about myself, like that you're risk averse. It's so important to know that that is such an important thing to be thinking about as you're looking at the job description, the agency, the type of work you're doing, how you're wired and where you are to be successful. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, sure. When I first moved to DC and went to Trachtenberg, you know, I had an internship at the White House, and I was around all these fresh off the Obama campaign staffers, and I really thought I wanted to go the political route. And then I saw the day-to-day reality of that, and I just realized I couldn't sustain that personally. It was just too much. And now I have a job where I have a really good balance. And for the most part, when I walk away from my desk, I'm not working late nights. Now there are plenty of jobs in federal government where people do work really long hours, particularly in surge seasons or something like that. But I really like the balance that it offers.
Fantastic. Who wants to answer this one next?
Yeah, I'll go next as well. I have to agree with Katelyn that that job security that you get with the federal government is definitely a weight off your shoulders. And to be fully transparent, you know, I did come back into the federal service from more of a private sector where I was a federal contractor. I did initially take a pay cut. I'm totally fine speaking about that. And it was something I knew was going to happen, and that evaluating financials long run, and with all the federal benefits that you get, you get a pension, you get a lot of these other, like Katelyn said, a work-life balance, where as a contractor, I was not getting at all, which was very unfortunate. I knew people that were working up until the wee hours of the morning, and then starting again a few hours later the next day. And that wasn't something that was for me. I liked that security. I liked that balance that you get with the federal service. And also, like I said, working for the nonprofit sector, that is a go industry where you have to be very passionate about the work that you're doing. And while I was, it was also a very overwhelming, overstimulating environment for me, where I realized that wasn't, I think, like Katelyn said, you kind of come into your own and be like, this isn't for me. I need something that's a little bit more paced out, and that's a little bit more manageable. And I'm a big proponent of, obviously, federal work, and it is there's a lot of benefits out there that when you kind of look long term, I think is, and within yourself, or what balance, what sort of situation is best for you.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I also was somebody else talking. I also took a sort of pay cut to go to the federal government, but in my mind, I was thinking long-term as well, long-term in terms of my career. Like I was in a job in my industry, but not doing policy work, and I wanted to do policy work. And then also I'm young, single, no kids, no major responsibilities. Like I feel like if ever I was going to make this change, it would be now. And so it just made sense for the moment. Also, the motivations are different. Like working in the private sector, I was working at a housing finance organization. And so the primary goal was like mission based, it was mission oriented. There were goals set out by the regulatory agency to meet around affordable housing and actually helping people in communities. But at the end of the day, the focus is on like volumes and the number of transactions. And that's just something that I didn't find personal motivation in. I'm much more motivated by public interest, helping people, that being the ultimate goal. And so it was just about fit long-term for my career and for my motivations, and making sure that I actually like the work that I do, and that I feel like good doing that work. So
when I switched from a contract to the Fed, I actually got a pay raise. So yeah, the pay difference wasn't much of a deal for me, or maybe I just did a bad job negotiating my salary the first time. I don't know, but yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. I feel like there's just more opportunities when you're a Fed. Like you can travel more, like going to conferences and more trainings and available to you and things like that. So there are just more opportunities to grow professionally, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. I think for me, work-life balance has been key. I have small kids as well, and it cannot be beat, I don't think, in the government. I mean, depends on your boss, depends on the organization, but it's just been amazing. I also wanted to say that I think it's a really, really exciting time to be in the federal government. And maybe this is just me, but I'm very interested in customer experience and really thinking about the customers that the federal government serves and how the federal government can be better at meeting people's needs. And this is a very popular topic right now. A lot of organizations are thinking about how can we do better? How can we serve people better? Whatever it is that we're doing, how can we, use taxpayer money better? How can we just make the whole experience of government better? And so I think it's a really exciting time for new, fresh perspectives to come into government. So I think it's just the best place to be.
That seems like a perfect way. I think all of you contributed to that answer. That seems like a perfect segue to opening up the group. So before I open up the breakout groups, I just want to thank our alumni again for providing such valuable, honest insights, and to our students for joining us here today.